Do you know what the most fought over piece of land is in history?
Keep watching to find out.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. We are Joshua and Alyssa, and this is Around the World, and we're happy you decided to come and join us today.
Yep.
Alyssa is going to tell us more about Israel. She got started last week, and she has something exciting to tell us today.
Yeah, I do. I have some more cool pictures to share with you about when I went to Israel.
3 years ago?
Yeah, I think 3 years ago.
2018, I think.
Yep. So, we started last week by talking about a place just outside of the city, or right at the edge of the city of Jerusalem, and now I want to talk about something that's very central to the Jewish people and to the Muslim people in Jerusalem, and that would be this wall, which is the Western Wall. And this is a very important piece of history and a very important place for Jewish people to go visit, because it's the closest that they can get to where the temple would have stood back in the time of Solomon's temple, and then the rebuilt temple after that, which neither one is there anymore. So this Western Wall is the farthest that the Jewish people can get to the area where the temple was, and so they go here to say prayers and to ask for peace for Jerusalem. And we went during the day first with my group, and we saw lots and lots of tourists there. And then we went back later, and I have more pictures of when we went back later, and it was a different scene.
Now, is this wall somehow connected with the old city? Like, is it a newer wall, or was it part of the original, or
I think Herod built this wall when
Okay.
Herod did his temple.
I thought there was some kind of link there, and I
Yes.
didn't know what it was.
But it's supposedly the original site that Solomon's temple was built at. So this is the side of the wall that I got to see, which is the women's side, because the women and the men in Jewish culture don't mix. So there was a gate between us, and the men are on the other side there, and the women were all on the side I was. And typically anybody who goes there should have their head covered, especially if they're Jewish. Now, tourists aren't necessarily abiding by that. The guys, it was a little bit more serious, though. They handed them something to put on the back of their head. But the girls, I think they weren't quite as strict about it. But any of the Jewish girls that were there definitely had their head covered. At the back, they had these cases full of different books. I'm guessing these are like prayer books of some sort, or some type of pieces of the Bible, which they would have called the Bible, but pieces of scriptures is something that would be very near and dear to them. And they're in Hebrew, so you have to open and read the books backwards. I can't read them, but they're still kind of cool to look at. And they had a lot of these little stands with books and a chair, and I saw people later when I went back, and they would sit there with the book open, and they would kind of rock back and forth, forward and backward, as they were saying or quoting or reading aloud whatever that line was from the book. So that was really interesting. So this side of the wall is Jewish controlled. If you go on the other side of the wall, that's where the Temple Mount is, and that is under Jordanian control. So the Muslims have that part of the Temple Mount, and they've had it for many, many, many years. The Jews got it back for a short time during a war, but then it got turned back over to the Muslim people. And it's hard because it's kind of just a battleground point for many, many years, and still continues to be, because the Jews believe they have the right to be on that Temple Mount and to build their temple. And the Muslims feel the same way, because they say that it's the third holiest site after Mecca and Medina for Muslims to go to, because supposedly Muhammad went there and offered some prayer of some sort. And below the wall is like a crawl space, not crawl space, but kind of like a tunnel and a hallway, and there is space down there that they say is even closer than that wall that I just showed you. It's underground, and it's a little bit closer to where the point of that temple should be. So that is very important to the Jewish people to be able to get back there, and they want to be able to worship and to build their temple again so that they can properly worship Yahweh in the way that they were told to in the Old Testament. And they really want to set up the temple again in the way that God commanded. So they have pieces that they've constructed according to the biblical dimensions and everything, and they have them ready, so when they get that Temple Mount back and they can build their temple again, they'll have all the pieces they need. So this is in the Jewish quarters in Jerusalem, and it's a menorah built to all the specifications and everything, and they have all these different pieces, and they're ready when they get it back because they believe that it's going to bring the Messiah and changes for the whole world.
The Messiah for the first time?
Yes. And will like trigger the end of the world.
Yeah.
Things. So, my tour group went back to Jerusalem, and a lot of people went shopping, and I really wanted to go back, and I wanted to see the Western Wall, or what's also called the Wailing Wall, at night, because I had read somewhere that it was a good idea to go back and see it at different times of the day, and I was so glad that we did, because when we went back at night, it was the Jewish people who were there, and that's probably their time of the day when it's not full of tourists. And we kind of talked about this a little bit in our story last week, but you can see the guys are all dressed in all black except for that white shirt, just like Nathan's grandfather, and you can even see they have long curls on the sides of their faces and black hats. That's the very typical, traditional, Orthodox way of dressing. And so I saw a lot of people dressed like that. And then on the girls' side as well. I'm not sure if this is the same on the men's side because I couldn't be over there for most of the time, but the girls, as they would say their prayers or whatever that they would be reading, they would back away from the wall without turning their back to it. So they would back away to a point, and then after a certain point, then they could turn around and walk away. So they couldn't turn their back on it for so long. So you can see the girls, they're kind of staggered here as they're getting closer toward the front. They backed up little by little by little by little to not turn their back on it. So this is the Western Wall, and it's at night, and you can see just right over the top of the wall there's another dome, part of the Dome of the Rock, and the main mosque is more toward the left, but it's just really interesting that they're that close and that it's such a point of contention. And at this time of day, we even heard the Muslim call to prayer over all the talking and all the different things happening and with the Jewish people. And just was a weird, eerie kind of thing to think they're that close to something that means so much to them as the Jewish people, and that just right over the wall is the people that they've been in conflict with since Abraham, basically.
Wow.
One bad choice and it causes all sorts of problems. But Israel is like a land full of stories of retelling and helping to make sense of the Bible, because we read about Solomon's temple, and it's a different thing to be there and be like, oh, this is where his temple would have been. Now it's probably under many, many layers. They haven't been able to dig away any of that, because neither the Jewish people nor the Muslim people want to give up any type of, openness to let people dig in the area. So they haven't really dug up much, but they're pretty sure that it's there in layers, all the different temples and everything. But it's a real place. When you read about it, it really does exist. So
cool. That's
the Western Wall, part of Jerusalem, and we'll talk a little bit more about some other parts of Jerusalem next week. And we have some more story today. And the cool thing is, our picture on the front
wall, right?
is, it is. It matches so great. So I thought that was kind of cool. It ties right into our story today, and it shows here is the Dome of the Rock, that big Muslim mosque, and then here is the Western Wall, which is what we talked about today, the closest that the Jewish people can get to the Temple Mount. So we left off our story last time with Nathan having said goodbye to his grandfather, right? And his grandfather was going back to Israel where he lived, but he told Nathan, he said, there's a secret. I want to be there when you have your bar mitzvah, but I'm going back to Jerusalem because I want to be there when Messiah comes back, and I know he will come back very soon. But Nathan had said to him right at the end, he had said, well, I think I've heard that Messiah already came, but his grandfather didn't want to hear anything of it. Well, the days following grandfather's return to Israel, Nathan spent a lot of time thinking. He really missed his grandfather. He and his grandfather had gotten so close over the year they had spent together. And he had so many great memories, and he really liked talking to him and hearing about things in Israel. And the thing that just kept getting stuck in his mind was thinking about the Messiah and who that must be or who it is. But he felt like he had heard somewhere that Messiah had already come. Well, where had he heard that? He kept thinking about it, and he remembered how his grandfather told him, a Jewish boy always thinks. And so he always tried to think really hard. And his grandfather told a story how back in 1914, there had been a bunch of Jewish people in a village, and the government leaders had told them they needed to paint all the houses. So since the Jewish people think, they painted the houses and they began to open stores up, all these brand new stores. Well, why are they opening stores and painting houses? Well, the Jewish people thought, if the government wants us to paint all these houses, there must be government officials coming to our village. If there's government officials, they're probably bringing soldiers. If there's soldiers, there's probably war coming soon. And you know what happened? World War I started right after that. And the Jewish people had their shops open, the soldiers came, and they sold a lot of goods, all because they thought. So, now Nathan knew this, and now it was very important to be a good thinker. So, he still continued to think, where was it that he had heard about a Messiah coming, or that a Messiah had already come? He kept thinking, and then he remembered, oh yeah, one day when he had been walking home from school, he had seen a sign outside a house, and it said, Happy Day Club today. Well, the kids inside had called for him to come in, but Nathan said no. And once they were all seated inside, he kind of sneaked over to the window and he began to listen as the teacher told a story from the Bible. And the teacher told the story, and she said that that the Jews had always been looking for a Messiah, and Messiah had come and he had died on the cross, and Nathan got really upset. Messiah didn't die, and Messiah hadn't come yet. And so he had stomped away and he hadn't listened to any more of what that Bible story was about. But he thought, a Jewish boy thinks. I should probably learn a little bit more about this and hear why they think Messiah has already come. So he remembered the street where this house was, and he decided the next week he was going to walk home from school the same way every day and see if he could find the day where they had their club. So he did. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. He couldn't figure out, maybe he was on the wrong street. Thursday, there's still no sign. Maybe he just dreamed it up. Maybe it really didn't exist. Well, Friday he walked past, and once again there were all these kids calling to him, come on in, and he recognized one of them as being another Jewish boy. So he thought, well, I go to school with most of these Gentile kids, non-Jewish kids, but he knew there was one boy that he knew that was a Jewish boy. So he thought, well, if this boy goes, it's probably okay for me to go too. So he went inside and sat down with all the other kids. The teacher got up to tell a story, and she looked a lot like his mom. She had really dark hair and dark eyes, and it made Nathan smile. She reminded him of his mom a lot. Well, she told a story of Aaron and Moses. Well, Nathan knew these stories. These were stories he was very familiar with. And after she finished, she said, do you know where this story is found? And Nathan raised his hand first. He was the fastest out of anyone. He said, it's found in the Torah. And the boys and girls around him kind of looked at him and they giggled a little bit. And the teacher put up her hand and she said, stop. No, the Jewish people have been told that the first 5 books of the Bible were written by Moses, and they refer to them as the Torah. And Nathan has been trained this way. So he understands these first 5 books were written by Moses. And the teacher continued with her lesson. Well, when the lesson was over, she said, Nathan, I think it looks like you have more questions. Do you want to sit and talk for a little bit? Well, he thought she was pretty nice, so he did. He sat and talked for a little bit, and she said, what's bothering you? He explained how his grandfather went back to Israel and that his grandfather was watching and hoping for the Messiah to return soon. But he was a little confused because she had also said that Messiah had already come and died. So he said, which is it? Is Messiah coming, or did he already come and die? And she smiled and she said, both. Both. She said, many years ago, Messiah did come. He came as a baby and he lived a perfect life. And he died on a cross. But he's God and he didn't stay dead and he went back up to heaven where he is today with God the Father. But Messiah is coming again someday and he is going to come again to earth and he's going to reign as a king. He's not coming as a baby. He's going to reign as king and he is going to remake the whole world again. So he came and he will come again. Well, you talk like you know about being a Jew. And the lady smiled. I am a Jew, she said. Nathan was confused again, but you talk like a Jew, but you also talk like a Christian. And she said, I am both. I am a Jew, and I am also a Christian because I believe that Jesus was the Messiah. He is the Messiah, and that he came, he died, and he will come again someday. That is not right. That made Nathan so angry. He got up. He said, I have to go home. It is Friday night, as you know, and it is Sabbath night, and I need to be home with my family, and this is not right. You should not be spreading these lies. A Jew turned into a Christian? Ha! And he stomped out the door. He was very upset to hear these things that she was saying. This is not what would make his grandfather happy. How could she be saying all these things? Could Messiah really have come? You're going to have to come back next time to find out.
Okay, well, we have another update from the Trinity Baptist Church in the Philippines.
Wow.
Yes.
That's exciting.
It is. So, we are going to show you some updated pictures. And before we do that, they started on September 12th, 2020, so just a few months ago, and they finished January 19th. So
Building the building?
Earlier this week. Yep. Finished the building, ready to use. So this is back in September. Remember, they have a group that's been meeting for Bible study out in this village, and so they wanted a place where they could all meet together. And protection from the elements and everything, of course. So back in September, they prayed and dedicated the land. Then they started digging, and we've showed you some of the pictures, digging those trenches for the foundation and for the walls, pouring the concrete. Yep. Now this is skipping ahead a lot, but this is where the building's up. They're covering the concrete with that white stuff. I did not realize that until just today that white stuff was not the color of the outside of the building. They painted it, and now it's pretty classy looking. That tan and those different earth shades on the outside.
That's cool.
Yeah. And this is the inside.
Wow.
Doesn't that floor look amazing?
That's so pretty.
And the ceiling too, it's like perfect.
It's really nice.
Yeah, so that is beautiful, and then I'm sure they'll just fill it with plastic chairs like the one that's over there on the side. So that is their building, and they were praying and hoping that this weekend they could use it for the first time. So obviously, right now, I do not know if they have yet, but I'm sure we will find out soon enough because they will send us pictures if they did. And so there they are outside their finished building, and they are hoping that they can start using it this weekend.
That is super exciting.
Yeah.
We've kind of followed their story little by little, and it's fun to see that they're ready to welcome people into a building and to let the people in the neighborhood know they're there to stay.
4 months.
That's
from
fast.
Start to finish, and they are ready to go.
That is pretty speedy.
They were not messing around.
Nope.
So that is cool, and remember that a building is not the church. It's not the most important part. The people are the most important part. But these people here in the Philippines, they work really hard on the people. And this is one of the tools that they use, and they will put it to good use. And they are excited that this is just one more thing they can use to reach people for Christ. And I'm excited to see how God will use it too.
Yeah, pretty exciting.
Yep.
Thanks so much for watching today. Hope you learned something new, maybe about Israel that you didn't know. If you've ever visited Israel, you should put that in the comments below because we'd love to see who else has been there. And if you haven't been and it's on your list, then let us know too because we'd like to go with you probably.
And we have something new here in our background. It's actually something we've had before, but I forgot to put it up last week. So you'll have to figure out, if you haven't already,
What could it be?
Yep, what has returned.
Yep. Make sure you tune in next week to hear the next part of our story and another part about Israel.
Yep.
Thanks
We'll
for watching.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye.